Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more dedicated legacy action. Today we're playing a bit of an unusual mono-red brew. I saw this in the 5.0 deck dump and it kind of takes some of the technology from Painter but sticks it in what is generally a sort of mono-red Stompy style shell. So we are doing the mono-red Stompy thing in terms of having the fast mana. So we've got our Ancient Tombs, our City of Traitors, our Chrome Moxes and our Spirit Guides. So we're trying to ramp out quite hard, ideally making 3 drops on turn 1. We have this whole string of very good 3-drops here. So we've got Magus of the Moon, which can shut down a lot of games right now. Eldrazi is a deck that obviously doesn't want to see this on the other side, and you can just straight up win games if your opponent is relying on a fetch land to find them basic early on. Very powerful. I think it's actually in a good spot meta-wise. We've got some Rabblmasters, which is just a threat that clocks very, very quickly, and we all know this one. It's been around for a while, and it's still great. Fable Mirror Breaker, so good it got banned in a format. Excellent staple of red. It has really improved red decks in general since it has come out, and I think it's a great tool for Legacy. Then we've also got Broadside Bombardiers. This is just throwing stuff all over the shop. Very good with the Fable because you've got a stream of shocks you can fire off with the treasure tokens. Yeah, very strong here. So all this stuff is like your standard mono-red Stompy style things. We've also got some Chalice of the Void to shut down our opponent's 1-drops. But then we've got some other stuff going on here. So we've got this Goblin Engineer pack. So this can find us a Phyrexian Devourer, which alongside Agatha's Soul Cauldron is just, we can make a creature as big as we want, which is quite nice. We can then use the Engineer to find some Disruptor Flutes and put them into play, like getting rid of useless Chrome Moxes later on. We can turn them into Disruptor Flutes if these are in the graveyard, and that's pretty tasty. We have Phyrexian Dragon Engine. This is just a nice card advantage engine, which is something that happens with red decks sometimes. You have a really powerful opening start to the game. You know, you play your big lock piece or your turn 1 Fable, your turn 1 Rabblemaster, something that's going to change the shape of the game immediately. But then in the sort of mid to late game, you're living off the top. And having this Goblin Engineer package for Phyrexian Dragon Engine gives you something to do in that mid game where you can just be drawing 3 extra cards a turn, which is pretty bananas. We also have this card, Molten Duplication. Create a token that's a copy of target artifact or creature you control, except it's an artifact in addition to its other type. It gains haste until end of turn, sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So we can use this to just copy an Engineer, and then the Engineer can go and turn itself into whatever we need. We can get ourselves more Bombardiers, we can get ourselves more Rabblemasters. Seems an interesting inclusion. I'm not sure quite how powerful this is going to be for us, but I can certainly see some uses for it, and hopefully as we play we'll work out how it fits into the deck quite nicely there. And that's more or less where we're at here, to be honest. We have one Arena of Glory, which allows us to have a creature with haste, so we can get a Goblin Engineer with haste, and that can do some pretty spooky things. Or, you know, throwing a Rabblemaster with haste that our opponent isn't expecting can do some real work too. So it's an interesting one-off to have, but we do still have a nice glut of mountains, which I like to see, and we've only got 2 Cavern of Souls in the list. We've got 1 Sundering Eruption, which is a land that can do some intriguing things. We can stop creatures being able to block, and we can also blow up a land. So we might be able to take out our opponent's only basic after they've tutored for it, and then they're stuck underneath Magus of the Moon because they won't have another basic land to go and fetch. And it can just go into a Chrome Mox as well. So that's where we're at with the main deck. And sideboard-wise, we've got a card that I am quite fond of. I haven't played it very much, but Pyrogoyf is something that has impressed me a reasonable amount. I've seen this cropping up in a few mono-red deck lists, and I wouldn't be surprised to see more of it. It's just a pretty decent body that comes in and blows something up. That's a good rate, and it can always go to the face. And because we're not a deck that cares about our own graveyard that much, you know, we've got this Engineer package, but our opponent is unlikely to be boarding in like ley lines and stuff against us. So the Pyrogoyf is going to be a reasonable size here. We've got some Cratermakers. These can blow up some tricky permanents because it can hit the colourless non-land permanents, and we can always just dome stuff for 2 and it's fine here. Pyroblasts, there's a lot of things we want to kill with Pyroblast at the moment, so I understand having that there. We've got some Faerie Macabres and we've got some Dead Gons, which can take out little creatures or can bounce some Marit Lage tokens and that sort of jazz. And that's the deck list. It's quite an unorthodox one because we've got this whole Engineer package going on, but when I see something spicy, I want to give it a whirl and see why it might be the case. Alright, remember to like and subscribe, and let's jam into this unusual mono-red brew. So this is a curious hand. We can lead off on Cavern and then try and play something on 2. And that's okay, but if we get wastelanded, things might start falling apart a little bit. But we are on the draw, so chance of finding another land are relatively high. I have a lot of mana sources. I think I will keep this one. We've got a game plan. We've got 8 bits of fast mana we can draw to. We've got other lands we can draw to as well. Definitely Colosseum, so probably on that Dredge Life over there. So our mana base is not going to be under attack here. So I'm going to cast a Chalice of the Void here. This will shut down things like Careful Study from our opponent. Breakthrough will have to be a breakthrough where X equals 1. It will shut down the flashback of Otherworldly Gaze. It will stop the Cabal Therapies. They can still cast them, they'll just get countered. So they can cast them to sacrifice their guys, but they won't be able to take anything out of our hand or their hand with it. Alright, they put a couple of dredges in the bin, so they're going to be able to do their thing here. A Lion's Eye Diamond. Yep. I'm surprised they didn't play that turn 1, unless they didn't have it. Alright, our opponent's going to get to go pretty big here. Alright, 2 Narcomovers. Let's pop their graveyard out. It's kind of an important zone here. Yeah, it's very much a turbo build with the old LED just kicking things off. So they cast this, it brings back their Poxwalkers even though the spell gets countered. There is a Dread Return in there. They don't have a Satoru, so that's something. We can make the Dread Return uncastable. Is that where I want to be here? I think so. I think we play a Chrome Mox. Right, I think first things first, we play this Disruptor Flute. We name Dread Return. I mean, that costs 3 more. So then we're probably playing City of Traitors and a Chrome Mox. What are we imprinting as the Chrome Mox? It's probably the Molten Duplication. That seems the weakest of these cards. And I think we play the Fable here, and then next turn we can start throwing things at our opponent's stuff. Alright. Right, so dredging here. They cannot cast the Dread Return. They can start bashing with their guys if they want to, but they will lose Bridge from Belows. Do I want to trade the Shaman token? I don't think I do. I think just having the ability to blow stuff up is too good here. Because we sacrifice the Goblin Shaman to the Broadside Bombardiers, and then we get to make sure we take everything out and our opponent can't stack them the way they want to. Yes, what am I going to get rid of? I think I'll get rid of this Cavern of Souls. A Soul Cauldron. Interesting. I think we are on Broadside Bombardiers plan here. And we can attack with our 2 creatures. Get treasure. Do some damage. And do they have a Cabal Therapy in there? They don't have a Cabal Therapy yet. They only have 1 bridge. I think we still get rid of this Poxwalkers, even though it can come back. We just don't want to be getting attacked by it. If we sacrifice this. So we remove their Bridge from Belows, and then we kill their guy so I don't get any tokens out of it. Now, we can just play the Engineer here, but we can do all that next turn. So we can play Engineer and Soul Cauldron and make our Bombardiers lethal without telegraphing it. And that seems like a pretty good way to play this one. I do like having a combo finish in decks. That's very much my jam. Doing something else and then having a combo finish is kind of what I really like. That's why I like Splinter Twin as a deck quite a bit. If they've got a a Lion's Eye Diamond in hand, or they draw one, things can get a little bit squiffy. Alright, they dredged over another Bridge from Below. We're getting attacked here. We are. There is a Cabal Therapy, so they can bring back the Poxwalkers. They come in tapped though, right? So we should have this game. Wasn't sure about that after the first turn, but our hate pieces have been pretty effective. So they get 1 Bridge from Below, but Broadside Bombardiers has Menace, and we can also throw a treasure token to clear out a blocker if we need to. And I do not believe our opponent will see this coming. So the Fable's going to flip. Not that that means anything here. The Soul Cauldron in. Place Engineer. Let's get rid of this Phyrexian Devourer into the graveyard. Let's get rid of this Devourer. Just counter on this Bombardiers that can't be blocked. That has Menace. Back. Who is the sort of graveyard combo deck now, eh? Yeah, we're going to keep doing this until we exile enough things to kill our opponent. And they're going to let us do it for a bit so they can see what's in our deck. So the reason why this works is we get the plus ability, the activated ability here, but we don't get the, if our power and toughness is too big, we sacrifice it that the Devourer has. Let me just pop that up for you just in case that was unclear. So when its power is 7 or greater, sacrifice it. That is separate to the activated ability, which is the only thing we gain from the Soul Cauldron. Okay, so Dredge. Pyroblast has text. Goblin Cratermaker sacrifices itself. That's pretty interesting. Faerie Macabre hits a graveyard. That's pretty interesting. Pyrogoyf is expensive. I don't think we want that. So these are things that we can have. Pyroblast might not do anything, and that is definitely a risk that we might be exposing ourselves to. We've got the main deck graveyard hate in the Agatha Soul Cauldron. That seems fine. The Molten Duplication probably seems on the weaker end of things here. So let's get these Faerie Macabres in instead of those. Then the Cratermaker, it sacrifices itself and then kills something. That is useful. Wings of the Moon can stop our opponent from doing Sephir Colosseum or even getting anything going to begin with. I like Chalice of the Void more than the Pyroblast because this stops multiple copies of like Cabal Therapy and stuff, so I think we're probably on that. It's just a case of whether or not we're fitting these Cratermakers in and how we would fit them. The Fable is kind of slow, but it's such a good thing to have to dig into our better answers. I don't think we're going to have time to leverage Phyrexian Dragon Engine, so we'll have a Cratermaker instead of that. And then Rabblemaster makes guys that can then die. That seems pretty reasonable. Sundering Eruption is kind of part of our mana base, so I don't really want to get rid of one of those. I think if we want a Cratermaker, it's probably got to come at the expense of something like a Fable or a Broadside. None of these things seem as good. None of these things seem worse than having a Cratermaker. So I think I'm going to take the Cratermaker out and just have one. Our opponent might have access to things like Force of Will. Not an uncommon thing to see in the sideboard of these dredge decks. We have some graveyard hate, but the rest of our hand is pretty cold. We've got 2 draw steps to find some mana. We will need to find a soul land or 2 lands off the top. Or fast mana. What's our odds on this? If we look at our deck list, we've got 18 plus 9. So that's, what, 27? It's a reasonable amount of hits. Not quite 50-50. I think I'll keep this just because of the graveyard hate. But it's a little sketch. A Lion's Eye Diamond. I'm going to see a Faith is Looting. They're not cracking. Oh, they are cracking the LED in response. Right, we're going to get rid of their Stinkweed Imp, and doesn't really matter what the other card is, does it? Just take out the LED. So they basically get to draw and discard 2, and then maybe draw and discard another 2. Reach from below. No Dredger. Excellent. So our opponent is got no resources. Their graveyard doesn't do anything. Not yet, anyway. We just need to find a little bit of mana. We've now drawn a piece of graveyard hate, so if we can find the land, we can deploy our graveyard hate, and that game is probably over at that point. And if we can make some guys, like make this Fable, then that'll just be lethal because we can just Soul Cauldron after looting away our Devourer. So drawing some kind of soul land would be excellent here. I really like Agatha's Soul Cauldron as like a piece of graveyard hate that also is a nice combo card that does a lot. It's a very flexible piece to have your deck doing things with because just the ability to hate on what your opponent's doing is really nice. Nice to have a combo piece that isn't just a blank when it's not doing your combo. A Lion's Eye Diamond, sure. Can we draw the mana source? We can, and I will be using it. Not ideal, but it's here. But it's where we are. So our opponent's probably on trying to get some mediocre beatdown going. We'd love a soul land, another volcanic. So that doesn't do anything here. We'll get rid of their Cabal Therapy. Soul land, please. All right, we've still got a game. Until we draw the mana, we've got a game. But we've got our opponent under wraps relatively well here. If we end up going to discard, we can discard our Phyrexian Devourer down the line, and then if we get Soul Land, we immediately win. Our opponent's end step. We'll take out this bridge from below. Making sure our opponent doesn't have Threshold, making sure that they don't have anything that does anything out of the graveyard. What does this Goblin Engineer do? Play it. Realistically speaking. I don't think it does anything. I think I'd rather just pass here. And then if we find another land, then we can just get this Fable going. And once we have Fable in play, it should be relatively elementary to win from that point. Now, if we take long enough, our opponent can build up enough resources to try and put a couple of things in the graveyard and dredge, and we only get to remove one of them. Our opponent not doing anything again. So we'll keep eating away at their graveyard. Doesn't really matter what we take out at this point. Can we find the land? It's Fable on the road. We cannot find the land. So we're going to go to clean up, and we're going to discard this Phyrexian Devourer. So if we can find a land, we get to win the game next turn with our Goblin off of the Rabblemaster. Any mana source does that. Now our opponent might have drawn into Force of Will blue card in this time. They might have some Hydroblasts as well. Faith is Looting. Just a fair Faith is Looting for now. 2 Golgari Thugs. This is what our opponent's been trying to set up for. This means we are not exiling... Oh, just another Faith is Looting. That's pretty good. So we're not exiling the Thug here because we can't stop them from dredging, so now we're taking out different pieces. So we can take out this Narcomoeba. Just stop our opponent's train rolling in the first place. I think that's worth doing. Our opponent does get to Faith is Looting here and dredge 12, which could be a little sketchy for us. This does run a few risks. So our opponent could dredge a bunch here and get enough stuff to put Satoru into play. So they're going to get one of these Poxwalkers. They have no Cabal Therapy. No, they have 1 Cabal Therapy and 1 bridge. 2 bridges now. They need to find a 3rd bridge or something that pops out the graveyard here. No, that's not true. If they Cabal Therapy us, they get to get 2 guys, get their guy back, then they can reanimate. They don't have the Satoru in there though, right? So what they're reanimating? Probably just... Wait, is there even a Dread Return? There is not a Dread Return, actually. So this is just going to be Cabal Therapy. They get 1 shot. The absolute Stone Cold Read would be Simian Spirit Guide here. That'd be sick. They named Fable and Mirrorbreaker. That's a fine card to name. I don't think there's any more action on our opponent's part this turn. Alright, can we find the mana source? Because this forces both the bridges out if we do. Arena of Glory. So this is 2 mana, 3 mana. So we can make a hasty Rabblemaster, which means they have to block both. Well, And then, do I want them to even block both? I have to block both. I think we cast this. We're not exerting this. We just play the Rabblemaster. We make a token. Our opponent has to block this and lose their bridges, or they die. No blocks. Really? Okay. Take this Devourer. Put the counter on the guy. And then we just win the game. Yeah, so they have to block here and lose both their bridges. So they're in a horrible situation. They just chose for it to be over. Statistically, it took us a lot longer to find the mana source than it should do. But the hand panned out all right because these dredge decks are pretty easy to take apart. What they do is quite powerful, and some decks struggle to interact with them. But if you have like good graveyard hate, it's very difficult for them to recover from it in a reasonable time fashion, considering how fast most decks in Legacy are. Combo looks great so far. Let's go to the second match. Oh dear, oh dear. Simian Spirit Guy, you are not going to carry the day here. Let's mulligan this one. Not a great lover of this one, truth be told. We can probably Chalice into Bombardiers, and that's fine. I guess we probably sling back a mountain here. So we might be giving up the City of Traitors if you want to go turn 1 Chalice, turn 2 Bombardiers. Let's see how low our opponent mulligans as well. If they mulligan really low, we might be tempted to go for a Chalice on 0, which means you just get to play a mountain out or a cavern. But we've got some disruption, we've got a threat, so that's something. I think we're going to play out the City of Traitors and the Chalice on 1. Chalice on 1 is going to be more effective against a lot more decks. It's also going to cancel a lot of the removal that could be pointed at our Bombardiers. Considering that's all our hands got going, that's something. If our opponent wastes us, like wastelands us, then we're going to have to take a few turns playing out lands before we get to play the Bombardiers. Alright, Ancient Tomb. So our Chalice is likely to have done nothing here. But we'll see. Painter's Servant. Okay, so our Chalice is doing something. Right, let's tap some mana. Let's get this Bombardiers on the go. I'm assuming our opponent is red Painter, because that's pretty much the main flavour of Painter right now. I haven't seen any blue Painter for ages, and given how good Pyroblast is right now. Alright, that's an illegal block because of Menace. We get our 2 damages then. Because of the potency of Pyroblast right now, I'm not expecting to see Painter decks that aren't red base. You might see someone splashing green or splashing white, but I doubt you're going to see any like non-red Painters. Like, people can still play it, but I would not expect it. If my opponent plays Painter 7, I'm going to put them on red Painter. We have Fable or something here. Yep, our opponent's doing similar stuff to us, but better right now. Not a big fan of that for us. So this Urza Saga represents the Grindstone in the near future. We need like a Magus of the Moon to cut this out. Chrome Mox is not good enough to blow up any of our opponent's things. Alright, we'll just keep attacking. Our opponent's got Ancient Tomb. We're at least ahead on 1 metric. So we can play out this Simian Spirit Guide next turn and then throw it at the Painter. That's probably our strategy here. I suspect our opponent is going to make some tokens and start beating down though. Yep, okay. So this Saga's going to be, what, 1, 2, 3, and then it's obviously going to grow from there onwards. There's more. Is this going to be a Well Engineer? It's the Engineer. So we're in an awkward spot where we need to kill the Engineer, but we also need to kill the Painter. And we can't do both. Unless we... No, I guess we could draw another Bombardiers, right? Then you can throw the Chalice at the Engineer, and then the other Bombardiers gets thrown at the Painter. That's probably our way out of this one. If we draw a Blood Moon, we can shut off the Saga, and then we kill the Engineer. And that probably buys us enough time. So we've got draws here that work. But we do have the fair plan to worry about as well from our opponent. What is this best on? It's probably just best on Goblin, isn't it? Place out. I'm not going to imprint because we are going to throw this. So we're going to say no to the imprint on this one. We're going to be making some pretty good inroads at our opponent's life tail here as well. Right, let's play this Magus. Eat it as a Saga. So they're going to make their guy. Put him to 10. It's going to strip out this Saga. Go attacks. His attacks. Then we're going to shoot this. Switching our Chrome Mox. God, Broadside Bombardiers is such a house. Really does the work. So this will put our opponent to 8. If we Stringless, that will put our opponent to 3. This hits for 2. So we're pretty close to finishing our opponent off here. Now things are definitely going to get pretty squiffy when our opponent starts activating Reflection of Kiki-Jiki. Hopefully we can put the game away before then. Another Broadside would be lovely. Right, they attack him with just the Shaman so they can have a nice big construct. Okay. There's more. Another Fable. Pretty good, isn't it? Pretty good. Okay, so we need to get rid of this Reflection of Kiki-Jiki. Disruptor Flute. Okay, that's not a bad hit. If we name this, we attack with this. That's probably okay. We're probably not attacking with our Broadside. I think we are just playing out the Disruptor Flute. We're going to put this on Reflection of Kiki-Jiki. If we attack, we're probably going to have to sacrifice our Disruptor Flute. That's not really going to be very handy. I think we'll just give our opponent another turn. Alright, they're going to do some more rummaging with this Fable of the Mirror Breaker, which is not the best, obviously. There's definitely some things like Fury that can just completely shatter this game on our part, and that would just be lights out for us. This one is quite finely poised. We don't have any of like the really big haymakers for artifact decks, like Fiery Confluence. We don't have cards like that in our sideboard, which is a bit of a pity. Let's see what our opponent wants to do. Like, this construct can be huge if they're getting a couple of treasure tokens going on here. You coming in with that other shaman as well? There's part of me that wants to unlock this ancient tomb and make them risk damages. And I think we take this. If we draw Broadside Bombardiers, we do win the game. Let's see if we can do exactly that. We did not do exactly that. We did draw a very good card, though. We can't kill all of these things, so we don't have any good attacks. But we have a Fable and Mirror Breaker of our very own. So we now have to get through another turn of our opponents. It is pretty sketchy over here. We might have to put this Goblin Shaman token under the bus, because this construct can be pretty large. Yeah, we're going to have to go under the bus, I think, here. Or can we trade off with one of their Shaman tokens and try and do things next turn? It's going to be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 damage coming in. So we have to block something. Okay, it's 9 damage coming in, so they're doing exactly lethals. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So something has to get blocked here. We can trade off with a Shaman token, or we can soak up 5 damage. I think trading off is better for us. It doesn't feel great, though. It's going to put us to 2. That's pretty close to being dead by Lightning Bolt if our opponent's running that. If they had a Lightning Bolt, they probably aren't. Actually, no, they can't Lightning Bolt because of the Chalice, right? Okay. So we block this. We're taking 4. No, I think we're going to trade off. I think we will make that trade. We could have chucked a Magus under the bus and see if our opponent goes for tapping their Ancient Tomb. Considering the amount of treasure they have, I don't see that happening, though. Broadside Bombardiers, please. Alright, we're going to pitch both of these cards in an attempt to draw Broadside Bombardiers. Well, that's kind of terrible, isn't it? So this attacks, we ping for 2, we block here, and we're dead. I don't think we have any way out of this one. I think the Fair Beats was just too much for us. They're just going to turn their guys sideways. I'm not going to insult my opponent's intelligence. Alright, we have a bunch of stuff that is useful in a matchup like this. So Pyrogoyf is pretty good in fair matchups where we need to be blowing up our opponent's creatures. So I don't hate that one. Cratermaker is a weird one. It can't ever kill Painter, but it can kill a bunch of their other things. So I think we want that one. Dead and Gone kills a bunch of their things. Welders, Engineers, small Saga tokens, Reflections. There is an argument for playing this Faerie Macabre. How do I feel about playing that Faerie Macabre, though? Not spectacular about it. I think if we're boarding in the Dead Gones, we probably want to take out these Chalices. Our opponent's not the worst at getting through Chalice because they can just Urza Saga up their 1-drops anyway. I like the Magus here because it shuts down the Urza Saga. Molten Duplication. Like, this does feel like the weak link. I would love to copy a Pyrogoyf, though, but that's just not what we're about right now. So we have our own Engineers. The Disruptor Flutes are kind of stepping on our own toes a little bit. I think I would rather have more flexible cards like Removal here. And that leaves us trying to find one more cut. What should that cut be? Do I want to trim 1 Chrome Mox because our opponent is playing Goblin Welders? I think so. Okay, deck. Let's see how this fares. We could bring in Faerie Macabres, but I think we're just better off having Removal because that's good against our opponent's fair plan and their unfair plan. Turn 1 Magus or turn 1 Rabblemaster. Either of these are fine. We'll keep this and get rid of this Devourer. What are we pitching here? We have Removal. This is good against Urza Saga, which is one of the things that was very potent against us. This gets rid of Ensnaring Bridge, but we can just kill the guy anyway. I think it's a Cratermaker that goes here. And we're just going to put the pedal to the metal and have a crack at our opponent's life total. If they don't play a creature, we Magus of the Moon. If they do, we kill their creature. This could be a Fury from our opponent. Just a good old-fashioned Lightning Bolt, sure. Our clock now looks a lot worse. So we could play out this Magus right now. Or we could hold up this Dead Gone. Like, we can't do both. Well, we can do both. We play the Magus and the Ancient Tomb becomes a mountain. We can't hold up Gone, but we can hold up Dead. However, our opponent isn't going to play any Urza Sagas out into that. Would I rather have 2 power in play and expose ourselves to Fury, Or would I like to have the ability to kill our opponent's thing and then maybe punish them if they've played out an Urza's Saga? I think I'm going to try that route. An Ancient Tomb. It's going to be a Fable. It is going to be a Fable. Fable is strong. If we'd have played out the Magus, they wouldn't have been able to do that. So I think that's on us, that one. Do we have to shock this? I think we probably do. Yeah, we should have played the Magus last turn. But if our opponent does have the Fury, then I guess it's kind of moot. At some point we have to play the Magus. And it's going to blow us out if they have the Fury anyway. The Magus isn't incredible here, but it does stop one of their better cards in the Urza's Saga. But it's not going to stop them from being able to play the game. I have to imagine they probably boarded down slightly on Urza's Saga's post-board. Red, red. And another red. Goblin Engineer with one floating. Why have they left one floating? Phyrexian Dragon Engine. And a Goblin Welder. Okay, so we are in some trouble here. Fable is fine. I don't believe our opponent is going to double block this. If we attack with both, they just take this. And do I want our opponent to lose a welder? I think I do. Let's see if our opponent takes this trade. I didn't think they would. Get this. Fable up and running. Chalice would have been alright here. But I do like the dead gone. Being able to remove things like Engineer seems important. Alright, we have one answer to that in our deck. As well as attacking with a little guy and just chucking a bunch of tokens on him. Our opponent might think we have a walking ballista, so they might not feel safe under this Sundering Bridge. But I'll be honest, they are pretty darn safe over there. Alright, get out of here, Mountain. I'll take another Fable. Do I want to trade my Magus of the Moon here? Yeah, I'll take that trade. I think all of our opponent's permanents are better than ours. Alright, so now they're going to get the double striker in. Yep. That's pretty bad news for us. So now we're going to lose something. Push 2 damage. But I think the only way we're winning this game is by pressuring our opponent's life total, because they've got engines. A literal engine. Whereas we need to just try and nickel and dime the damage through. Right, they want to keep the Magus around, so they don't even have to take damage, because they know that's what this game is about now, from our perspective. Alright, we'll have another Fable. We can do the make many Fables, and sort of do the bad Splinter Twin type thing. But our opponent can just hide behind an Ensnaring Bridge. Painter's Servant. Alright, we could be dead in the very near future here. I don't know how many Pyroblast our opponent's going to have, but it's still named blue. Right, our life total does not matter here. That's not what this is about. It's can we kill our opponent before their engine is insurmountable. So we need to force damage through every single turn, if possible. Broadside Bombardiers. Now that is a Magic the Gathering card. We are not going to rummage, because I don't think we can do better than Bombardiers here. If I play the Bombardiers out, and we attack with it, they have to... How many creatures they have to put in front of it? They put these two in front of it. It dies. Right, I think we're still casting it. Also, now we can tap our Chrome Mox for blue, because this Cratermaker is red-blue thanks to the Painted Servant. Not that that really matters here. So if we attack with this and like this and this, what happens? We need to force through some amount of damage. The problem here is our opponent gets to weld out this Dragon Engine, then weld it back in and block. So can we realistically force through damage? If we send these two creatures, our opponent blocks 2. This Kiki-Jiki is active as well, right? Oh, yikes. Yeah, so we're just dead every which way here, aren't we? I think we need our opponent to make a mistake to try and win this one. Alright, let's see if our opponent's going to make an error. We need our opponent to do stuff, and then we need to be able to blow up the right thing at the right time. Right, so going for a copy of Phyrexian Dragon Engine. The problem with doing that for us is that doesn't stop them from being able to weld and engineer their way out of this one. So then they can put this Dragon Engine and like the Painter in front of this Bombardiers if they want to. Right, so they need to put something else in front of this Bombardiers. I think they should just put the Painter and the Dragon Engine in front of it. What next? So our opponent also gets to first strike before they get to weld anything. So this is just nightmare upon nightmare. We've already lost this game. Doesn't really matter which way you put these. So now we have to do something. So if we... I guess we kill the Engineer here, right? And that stops our opponent having access to specifically Grindstone. Because otherwise, the Kiki-Jiki copies this. If our opponent didn't copy this, then we have no way of winning. Although if they took 6 here and we threw something at them, then we'd die. So they had to block a guy. They could have just put the Painted Servant in front of a Magus or something. But now they can't copy their tutor effect. So we are technically not dead next turn. But we had to make that because if we just let our opponent have this untapped Reflection and the Engineer, then we are 100% dead. I'm surprised our opponent Reflection there. especially when we've got no cards in hand. Everything is face up and they know that they just have the game there. So we might get an additional turn here. Now, they are still drawing loads of extra cards every turn. And that is going to be very difficult for us to overcome. Ugh, Chaos Defiler. Uh-oh, SpaghettiOs. So we're going to be losing all the permanents all the live long day here. So they can welder in the Defiler, copy the Defiler. We're getting defiled over here, that's for sure. Another welder, sure. So the combo plan isn't even remotely necessary now. They can just crunch through everything we've got going on. I like the Arena of Glory in our opponent's deck. Having hasty engineers is pretty good. It's something that's in our deck. You want to welder in your Defiler, blow up something, copy the Defiler, attack for, blow something else up, attack for 5, then that gets blown up at end step. Yep, here we go. I'll let our opponent have this joyful time. They choose a permanent and it's gone. I wonder what it's going to be. It's probably our Reflection of Kiki-Jiki. I think that's the scariest thing we have. Our opponent agrees. So now they copy this. They attack for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10's pretty good. No? They're playing very cautiously where they can just copy the Defiler whenever they want. Yeah, we can call that one a day. I think the superior red deck is smashing us up there. I think Painter is much better than MONORED Stompy as a general rule. Well, I do like what we're doing here, and we do get a lot of free wins with some of our stuff too. So it's not like we're positioned horribly, but the Painter deck, it just looks really good right now. And we don't have the sideboard you would normally expect. If we had like some Fiery Confluence, which can either pick off all their little guys or blow up all their artifacts, that sort of thing is really nice. All right, we'll go to round 3. Oh, this is a weird one, isn't it? Why is our mana betraying us? Like, we can just steal a game with turn 1 Magus of the Moon quite often on the play. I'm willing to try that because of how good Magus of the Moon is in the format right now. Oh, wait, no, we can't do it turn 1 because this comes in tapped. Oh, no. A huge error was made. Whoops. We definitely should have mulliganed this one. I completely forgot about the Arena of Glory coming in untapped. Okay, so now our opponent gets things like Daisies to work against us. We're just going from bad to worse. Oh dear, oh dear. Yep, we deserve to lose this one. Okay, what are we casting here? So our opponent gets one of their lands now. Are we playing a Chalice so that we can play a 3-drop next turn? I don't hate that. Hate it a little bit. Play silly games, win silly prizes, right? That's what we're about today. So our opponent's probably going to cast something like an Entomb here. And then we're just going to kindly move ourselves into the dirt. Oh, it's a blue mana. A Spell Pierce, an honest-to-God Spell Pierce. Okay. They've played into our Magus of the Moon there, so we can find a land. Maybe we get to do that. A Hedge Maze. Alright, so probably looking at like Bug Beanstalk would be my guess here. But I wish we didn't keep this hand. I wonder whose fault that is. Alright, come on, land. Why are there no lands in our deck? What is going on? This is not the first time we've been short of lands either. It's starting to wonder if there's an actual problem with our configuration here. We should just be running some more lands somewhere. Psychic Frog. See, if we'd have had a land, we could have stopped this coming down. And now we just can't beat Psychic Frog in our deck. What are we supposed to do now? Alright, I'm going to pack this one up. We're not beating this frog. Yuck. Okay, so that was on us for keeping that hand. But what is going on with our mana base here? 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. 27 feels a little bit light. I think you want about 29 here. Okay, so this is the matchup where I'd like some Pyroblast, which means we've got to board out these Chalices. So that's something. I don't mind Pyrogoyf. It does two things at once. I don't think we need these Disruptor Flutes. I don't think we're dead and goning our opponents here. Agatha Soul Cauldron is all the great hate we need. It's probably just these Molten Duplications, isn't it? I understand what these can do in terms of trying to make us like combo off and stuff, but I just don't think that's the best use of our mana. Let's just have some nice threats in Pyrogoyf. Why are we not finding land? We have 2 mana sources. We can probably draw a third at some point. We at least have a play. Let's put a Rabblemaster underneath this one. I think, is it the Rabblemaster or is it the Bombardiers? I like having the evasion on this. Alright, I'm going to put the Rabblemaster. There is an option to just not do this because Bombardiers doesn't actually kill the things we want to kill, like Psychic Frog. So just have double Rabblemaster and try and jam your opponent. I'm not a mono-red Stompy expert by any stretch of the imagination. So I'm not sure what the correct line is there. But maybe it is the Rabblemaster's. Just get that threat up and running. Polluted Delta from our opponent and a pass. Nothing to gobble up with our Soul Cauldron. Oh, this game. Oh, we've got these Fable and Mirror Breaks on our deck, so we should be on the slightly higher land count because we can always shuffle them away. Especially since we're doing Phyrexian Dragon Engine stuff as well. Well, things are definitely going to start snowballing out of our control very quickly here. Get rid of this Polluted Delta. Keep our opponent off of things like Psychic Frog, off of Delirium, off of Delve cards from Murktide. They're definitely going to be running Murktide in their Beanstalk deck. Sure. Lo and behold, we drew a mountain. We also drew another Rabblemaster. They're going to Force of Will this and draw a card. They certainly are. So if we'd have been able to get this down before they have the Beanstalk, they might be forced into forcing. And that's not great for them. This is definitely a matchup where having Blood Moons and stuff is great. Another up the Beanstalk. They're going up the Beanstalk and we are going down into the dirt. Our home is the dirt. Let it embrace me. Okay. Force of Will, get under my Cauldron. We're making up a stew in our Cauldron here. Right, this is going to come in untapped this time, which is something. Am I exerting this? I might as well. Like, what else are we doing, right? You got Force of Will that draws 2 cards. Yuck, yuck, yuck. So we can still win this game if we just stop our opponent being able to play the game using a Blood Moon style effect. It is miserable though. There's no denying that we are not having a good time. Even though our deck's got some pretty good tools for what our opponent's up to. Our opponent is just too set up right now. You're going to play another Beanstalk. A Witherbloom command. I will respond. Goodbye, Force of Will. We have no window where we get to take anything out of our opponent's graveyard. We can't stop them getting a land. Because our opponents... It all happens within the resolution of the spell, so we never get priority mid-spell. Alright, so they've filled up their graveyard nicely. Another Beanstalk. Wowzers, trousers. Like, what am I doing here? What am I doing? I'm going to take this Soul Cauldron with an eye to taking out this Psychic Frog. I'm going to take it out now because I want that underneath our Soul Cauldron. I'm going to keep this mountain because we can pitch it to our Bombardiers once it has Psychic Frog text. But yeah, we are not winning this one. Unless we can steal a game with a Magus of the Moon. Our opponent has 1 island in their deck, I imagine. They probably brought in their Hydroblast, so it's not as if they're cold to win. They're certainly going to see enough cards along the way here. Pyrogoyf. Okay. You've got a Pyrogoyf. Like Fable, if our game plan is to try and get a Magus in play and hope that's good enough, then we probably are playing this Fable out. How many forces have we gone through? 2 forces and a force negation. Alright, so we're in with something now. We can shrink this Pyrogoyf. Like, we're probably looking at about 10% chance of winning this game. Even if we get like Cavern, Magus of the Moon, we can't be sure that's going to stick around, so our opponent might just be able to fail push it or whatever. Murderous Cut. On our poor defenseless Shaman token. Why shouldn't your 1-mana removal spell also draw you 3 cards? Why shouldn't that be a thing? So they've got Revolt if they have Fatal Pushes over there. Let's get rid of this. That will shrink their Pyrogoyf by 1. But they're going to hit us with it. And it's not going to be pretty. They're looting away a Hydroblast. Wow, we must be... Oh, sorry, they don't get to choose it, do they? They just mill it over, right? Is this going to be... No Mystic Sanctuary, okay. They're going to draw a card to get that Hydroblast in hand. To stop Magus of the Moon shenanigans. Psychic Frog. Well, I hate that. Our opponent certainly has the cards to pitch to that one. Pyrogoyf. If we're trying to dig to specifically Magus, I think we have to get rid of both of these. Sundering Eruption. Maybe we get to cheese a win at some point. Oh, I can't imagine this is resolving. We can kill the Pyrogoyf here. So we put 4 damage on it and then we Soul Cauldron a card away. I think the hardest type for them to get more of in the graveyard is probably going to be this Soul Cauldron. So that or their Hydroblast. I don't really want them having the Hydroblast. But if they have any instant here, we get blown out. So I think we have to take the Soul Cauldron out here. Okay. Do I want this Sundering Eruption? Or do I want it to be a land? I think we're going to keep this in hand for now. Because maybe we stop our opponent from doing anything. And then we can make a hasty Goblin Engineer and win the game next turn, potentially. How are we doing this? If our opponent attacks here, they need to have 2 removal spells / blockers, which is very doable when they've got 7 cards in hand. They've got Psychic Frog, they've got these Beanstalks. What is this? Sure, a Murderous Cut. Hello, Darkness, my old friend. We're in the dirt again. Alright, I'm just waxing lyrical because we are so far behind. We only have a cheese. That's all we have to try and win this game. And it would be sweet if we got to cheese our opponent. I'm annoyed we lost game 1, but that's entirely on me for forgetting that Arena of Glory doesn't just come in untapped. It's got such a low clause of just having one mountain that my brain was just like, yeah, it's fine. And then immediately regretted that keep. So our chance of just stealing game 1 with Magus of the Moon, which would have absolutely stolen game 1 if our opponent didn't have a counter spell. So, right, our opponents, the cards they're going to have to discard at end of turn are now getting funneled into the frogs. They get to deal more damage to us. Right, they could have fed some more cards into that, really. Don't do it to me. This is going to be a Murktide, so our creatures without flying can't block this turn is going to be irrelevant. Okay. Why shouldn't your massive yacht also draw you 3 cards? Okay. So, they're just discarding cards on a turn. Discarding a Fatal Push. That probably means they have another Fatal Push, because they do happen to have Fatal Push mana just sat there. We are dead on the next turn. Our opponent can just funnel everything into the frog if they want to. An Ancient Tomb. Well, I guess our opponent could make a mistake. Alright. Looks like we're getting hit by a Force of Will. I'm happy to concede that one. That game was brutal. The first game was on us. This is a game where we have to cheese. Like, our opponent has so many good tools that they can just leverage here. And Psychic Frog really just does a whole number on what we're trying to do here. And they can just have Psychic Frog and counter spells, and that's probably good enough because we'll have 1, maybe 2 spells in an entire game to interact with the frog. If they just counter them, then it's lights out because the frog is bigger than all of our creatures. But we do have the cheese of combo, which felt useful to have. But in order to have that, we've got less Blood Moons in total, which is how we would normally beat this match. Let's go to the 3rd round. Will I want to keep a hand that just does turn 1 Spirit Guide? I don't think so. Sorry, turn 1 Spirit Guide into Rabblemaster. I don't think that's good enough. I would like to have 2 things that I do in a game. Alright, this is a better hand. We'll keep this. I don't think I want to be doing Chalice into Chalice. So we're just going to go turn 1 Chalice, turn 2 Magus. The old classic. Under City Sewers. What are you going to surveil over? Is it going to be a giant monster that you reanimate on turn 2? Let's hope not. So our opponent could be, like, basically any blue-black deck. They could even be a Storm deck as well. The Epic Storm runs 1 Under City Sewers and 1 Commercial District, the red-green surveil land. A Wasteland. Okay, so our opponent is on a fair-ish deck. So they're not on Storm. Alright. This does expose us to a Wasteland from our opponent. Let's hope that doesn't happen. Right, we're in. So we're not getting Entomb Reanimated for a while. Are they going to Wasteland us though? No. Okay, that's good. We get a chance to have Magus of the Moon do its thing. Psychic Frog, that beats Magus of the Moon, unfortunately. But we do have the combo cheese, so maybe we'll be okay. Molten Duplication, that is actually going to be useful here, in theory. But this frog is just going to outclass what we're doing, unfortunately. What a difference play versus draw makes here. If we get this down before our opponent gets to Psychic Frog, it's a big deal. The problem there isn't play or draw, really. The problem is Psychic Frog. Okay. Is our opponent on a fair plan, or do they have some sort of reanimator stuff? Will we be able to find out if they have reanimator stuff in this particular match? Or this game, sorry. That does change how we sideboard. So hopefully our opponent will discard stuff like Entombs to their Psychic Frog. We can't block because their Psychic Frog is just too good. It wins combat, certainly against a 2-2 here. Discard something exciting. Show us. Alright, they're not discarding, they're just drawing. Sure. Psychic Control of Khazad-dûm. This is feeling more like a Rescaminator style build. Is that a second swamp? And an Animate Dead. Well, our opponent is certainly showing us what they have available. Alright, the cheese is on. Rabblemaster, you're not helping with the cheese. If they counterspell this, I don't believe we can win the game. We're not going to have enough time. This is just a 2-turn clock, and we need to have this. Alright, they got a counterspell. Yeah, we're done there. Okay, well, I would like some Pyroblast. At least our opponent showed us enough to let us know that we need these Faerie Macabres. Don't want anything else here. Like Dead and Gone, we can use that to bounce a Psychic Frog, but that doesn't feel great. Our opponent's definitely going to have dazes and stuff in there. Disruptor Flute, I guess we can name Psychic Frog. That's not really what I want. Can name Wasteland, but I don't really care about Wasteland. Would I rather have this Molten Duplication, which also pitches to Chrome Mox, or would I rather have Disruptor Flute? I think I'd rather have the red cards to pitch to Chrome Mox that, you know, can sometimes change the maths that our opponent isn't expecting. The bouncing reanimated cards might be good as well. Maybe that's just better than a couple of Molten Duplications. At least bounce like a giant monster. Okay. We've got 5 pieces of Graveyard Hate, and we do have tutors for them. But at the cost of having less opportunities to make turn 1 Blood Moon is certainly rearing its head in these matches. This is already a 5-card hand. I think we have to mulligan this. Alright, I can definitely jam with this one. Alright, City of Traitors, you are going to go away. I'm going to go for a turn 1 Fable, which is a mighty powerful thing to be doing. We can follow this up with an uncounterable Magus of the Moon. So this Fable is severely looking like Force of Will fodder right now. If they have a Force of Will, they probably want to point it here because it's just so hard to deal with this after the fact because it's like so many bits and pieces going on. Right, we've got a 2 for 1. Let's see if our opponent goes for basics or not. The Wasteland. Well, that's not good for us if they want to Wasteland us. Yep. And as we discovered, I don't think our deck has enough lands in it. I suppose this probably has to be on Goblin for the majority of the things in our deck. Thanks. I hate it. At least we have the graveyard covered. Oh dear, oh dear. I think we might be too light on lands in our deck in general. We did throw away a City of Traitors, but I think that's correct because we get to make the turn 1 thing. Our opponent has to have Force of Will into Wasteland. They have to have that exact sequence. And if they don't, then we get one of either our Magus on 2 or we get our Fable on 1. And either of those pulls us massively ahead in this game. So I think it's worth keeping that and going for it. But now we are in trouble. I think keeping the Faerie Macabre so we don't just get blown out by reanimates and stuff also makes sense. Okay, Goblin Engineer. What on earth are you going to find me? I guess we're going to go and put this Phyrexian Dragon Engine in... this Phyrexian Devourer in the bin. Right? If we put the Devourer in the bin, we could just draw the Soul Cauldron if our opponent taps out and just win the game. Alternatively, we put the Dragon Engine, and if we draw anything like a Chrome Mox, we don't really want to get rid of our Chrome Mox. So I think it is just the Devourer and try and spike into the Soul Cauldron. And that is a good way that we can actually win the game. We've probably got 2 turns before this is unwinnable because once our opponent's drawn 2 extra cards with Psychic Frog, I think that's probably enough. Like, 3 cards is definitely lights out, I would say. Like, normally, if your opponent taps the 1 ring 3 times, that's normally game over. If opponent hits you with Psychic Frog 3 times, you're probably looking at being over. Alright. Drawing a card. At least we can't get reanimated on. So maybe we have enough time to do this. But our opponent's unlikely to tap out unless they're putting something on the board. And if they put something on the board, then our engineer doesn't get to try and swing. Maybe they go for an Animate Dead here. And tap out. Okay, so if they wasteland us, then we have no chance of winning the game next turn. A Dalthy Voidwalker. Right, we've already done enough with this engineer. Don't wasteland me. They've wastelanded me. Okay, so we need at least 2 turns before we get to do what we need to do. And we kind of need runner here. Chrome Mox is part of that runner. Now we could get goofy and try and just put a Phyrexian Devourer into play, but that sounds terrible. Am I attacking for 1 here? I'm not blocking, so get the bits in where you can, I suppose. I don't want to play out this Chrome Mox in case our opponent has any way of destroying it. I like to at least have it be a Lotus Petal rather than just him to throw it myself. Alright. Another card that our opponent has got ahead of us. Okay. This gives us a line to win the game, potentially, if our opponent's going to Entomb and try and put a big monster in. If we draw the Soul Cauldron, our opponent has nothing, we get to win the game. So we've at least found a line that works. Oh, I'll cast that Animate Dead. I know you want to. Oh, to reanimate. That's worse for us. We'll take out both of their threats here. Because if they had Animate Dead, they wouldn't be able to fail push. Now they might be able to fail push as well. Which is relatively likely because they're drawing extra cards. And they haven't been cantripping, which means they've been drawing things that aren't cantrip, which is removal, creatures, counterspells, all that sort of stuff. Nope. Still nothing. Our deck does not feel like it has the requisite number of lands in it. Alright, so we're going to take a bash for 4 here. My opponent draws their 3rd card with Psychic Frog. Or is it 4th? It's all probably a bit too much for us. We have to dodge removal and counter magic. And we have to draw 3 of in our deck. Well, maybe we get there. Maybe we don't. We have to dodge Daze. We have to dodge Fatal Push. We have to dodge Brazen Borrower. We have to dodge Force of Will. But we've managed to put together something that says, do you have it to our opponent? Now, they've got 4 open mana over there and 4 cards in hand. So they're going to have something. Our opponent has us dead next turn if we don't go for it either. Alright. Let's get ruined. Oh, is that a Fatal Push that you were holding up the turn before as well? It is. Let's concede. Alright. Our deck does not have enough lands, I don't think. Let's go to the final match. We are looking at trying to turn this around. We are currently at 1-3, so we've avoided the reverse trophy, but we do need to try and put a second one on the board, get some play points back, and have a little bit of dignity. Let's jam. Alright. Turn 1, Fable is pretty good at the end of the day, isn't it? Let's keep this. We're on the play, so I have to have a force to interact with this in a favourable fashion. Then we're going to put this Sundering Eruption underneath it. We do have to play a City of Traitors, but if we get our Fable, we don't care if we lose the city next turn. I don't like this pause from our opponent. Hopefully they've just stepped away to do something important, and they're not just going to ruin our day. Alright, we're in. Okay. So we get to do a little bit of rummaging next turn. I can probably get rid of at least one mountain and see what we draw. Just a basic island. Doesn't tell us a great deal about our opponent. Alright, we're going to get rid of a mountain and a spirit guide here. It's just to try and high roll here. So let's smash down this. It is into a daze, but we have this secret Simian spirit guide that could really jam our opponent up if they try and daze here. Go on, try and daze me. So our opponent dazes this and we pay. The tempo is an absolute beating for our opponent. Right, they force the will, pitching a Stifle. Alright, so we might be looking at some kind of Stifle Naught shenanigans over there. Let's get our little treasure. Let us play this Goblin Engineer. Am I doing it with this treasure token, or do I want to keep more artifacts in play and use the Spirit Guide? I think I want to use the Spirit Guide. Just have this artifact in play. We know there's no days to try and blow our opponent out with, because they would have just fired it off then, I would imagine. Could do something like a Stifle on the trigger. A Brainstorm. Our opponent doesn't want us to have this Engineer. We are kind of all in on what we've got here, but this does give us the win in 2 turns when the Fable copies the Engineer. Well, we're probably just going to get the Phyrexian Dragon Engine rather than going for the Devourer combo at this point, because we need to refuel. Alright, Force of Will pitching Murktide Regent. Okay, we got a 2 for 1 off of that. It did cost us a Spirit Guide actually, so it was a 2 for 2. But we're ahead on board for now. Our opponent's ahead in cards. Let's see if we can find something spicy. The Ring of Glory is kind of spicy. Given the amount of mana we have, I'm okay playing this one out. I think the hasty land is quite a good one to have access to. Are we supposed to sandbag this land so that we can randomly give something haste they're not expecting to have haste? Although they're kind of expecting everything to have haste because we have Reflection of Kiki-Jiki. Anyway, we'll sandbag this land and keep the haste hidden and protected from a wasteland as well. Alright, we're going to see the 2 mana white guy. Nope, we're seeing a Dress Down. Sure, and then they're going to untap into Dreadnought or Null Drifter. And then things start getting a little bit awkward for us. Right, it's a Dreadnought. It's another Dreadnought. Okay, our opponents just put lethal on board. A little bit rude. 24 damage. We have to lose our entire board. No, we can't even lose our entire board because the Reflection tapping to make another guy isn't enough. Okay. We don't have great artifact hate. 13 is a lot, isn't it? 5, 10. Well, I guess everything starts with let's make the Broadside Bombardiers. If this resolves, then we can start working out what we're doing. Like, we're definitely dead on what's going on over here. So if we copy this... Do we have this right? Because these both have Menace. They have to take 4 here. We fling 1 Bombardiers, and then we fling the Reflection of Kiki-Jiki. I think this is it. So I have to double block this guy. So these are... block is fine. So we'll sacrifice creature artifact to dome our opponent here. And we will sacrifice to dome our opponent. Then we hit them for 4. Oh, wowzers, trousers. Broadside Bombardiers, you are an absolute lad. Cratermaker, get in my deck. I like these dead Gons as well. I quite like them for the Gon side, actually. Not too big into the Disruptor Flutes here. Molten Duplication, we keep coming back to this one. They should probably just be 2 Shatter Skull Smashing in our deck. I understand why they're in the deck for what they do, but Magus of the Moon is reasonable but not exceptional here. I think that could probably be the cut here. So the Chalice shuts off things like Plow, which is going to be the main way our opponent tries to interact with us doing our thing. Our opponent is quite a basic land focused deck. You sometimes see multiple of each basic out of them because they only have to be a 2-color deck now. Like the good old days when I first started playing Legacy and like Dreadstill, like Stifle Naughts decks were good. Those were the days. Back when Ashen Morgauger was a playable Magic the Gathering card in Legacy. 3 mana 4/4. What a world. Okay, so you can bounce a guy. We can do some stuff. Sure. We can go for a turn 1 Magus if that's our jam. I'd like to draw a kind of mediocre red card if that's what we're doing. Is the mediocre red card actually the Magus of the Moon here? Broadside Bombardiers is not great on its own, but I do like being able to press damage. Cast as Chrome Mox. Are you going to stifle my imprint trigger? That'd be pretty funny. I think it is the Magus. And we'll go for Bombardier action. We're going to see Brainstorm Days here. We're not paying. Yeah, this is something I don't like about playing these sort of red prison decks, is if your initial wave kind of gets stopped and you kind of left holding just nothing. I'm going to play around Days this time because we can. A Brainstorm. You keep digging over there, opponent. Alright. We're attacking. I don't think we're sacrificing our Chrome Mox though. We can use that to take out like a little creature if they play it. Although that thing has flashed the Doorkeeper Thrall, so they won't play until our end step. But we can still take it out if it's still in our turn. Null Rod. Okay, I guess we're definitely using this Chrome Mox as food. So I could play this Dragon Engine into a Daze. I don't think I need to do that. I don't think we're going to sacrifice this Chrome Mox yet, because this Chrome Mox means our opponent doesn't get to play Doorkeeper Thrall, which shuts down their roads to Dreadnought. And yes, we do technically have an answer to Dreadnought. I'd rather stop it twice, if you know what I mean. Right, so we get to do a... I want this on Dragon Engine. I don't. I want to have the 1 mana up just in case things go really awry. And if they counter our Dragon Engine, it goes in the bin anyway. So this might make our opponent want to Swords to Plowshare as a different target. I love how it has a little 9/9 on it on the text. As if anyone's ever going to meld it or whatever the thing is called. Is it melding? Meld. It is meld. Right, so we're not going to throw this Chrome Mox. We're going to wait until our end step. See if our opponent does anything. They did nothing. Okay. So we're just keeping their Doorkeeper Thrall at bay, potentially. There's a Wasteland. We can lose our city here. Nope. We're going to see a Doorkeeper Thrall now. Nope. 3 mana. This is going to be a Null Drifter with a Stifle. This isn't really one I enjoy trying to Dead and Gone. But maybe they block our Dragon Engine and we first strike it and then shoot it down. Or we first strike it and throw the Chrome Mox at it. Either works. Right, I think we just jam. We can't block this because of Menace. So we're going to do the first strike damage. Sacrifice this Chrome Mox. Did it 2 damage. Our creature lives. We deal them 2. I'll play a little Fable here. Pay around 1 days. This also gives us plenty of food for our broadside moving forward. Alright, we're just in. Okay, I'm feeling confident about this one. Our opponent's got 5 cards in hand. Our opponent is not like a Wrath of God style deck, but they will have a bunch of pinpoint removal like Plows and Prismatic Endings. Maybe like Get Lost even, I've seen. Our opponent's tapping and untapping over there. We've got him in a bind. Oh yeah, you Brainstorm. You look for that answer. We have lethal next turn if our opponent does nothing. But they do have Stifles in their decks. They could stifle the Bombardiers trigger, so it's not necessarily something we want to just be throwing stuff willy-nilly, but we will have spare artifacts to... Swords to Plowshares. That's a good one. So we've got a 2-turn clock now. Another Brainstorm. Interesting that they didn't do that for casting the Plow, just to get more information to do with their turn. But I guess there's nothing more important at that stage than getting rid of that Bombardiers, probably. So it's not going to change their play necessarily. Because that Bombardiers on its own is worth 7 damage. Okay, deck. What have you got for me? We've got a Rummaging here. Don't hate that one. We'll use this ability. I'll get rid of this Cavern of Souls. I think this Cratermaker is another tasty answer to have. Right, let's send in the clowns first and see. Don't know if I've ever seen anyone actually meld a card in a game of Magic the Gathering. Maybe like once I might have seen the Angels, Brizella or something like that. The first time they did meld, back in one of the Avacyn sets, the one where it was like Eldrazi in Innistrad. But yeah, I don't even know if that's true, if I've seen that at all. All right, our opponent is now letting us go to attacks, so we just have to listen to me ramble about other stuff, and we can just get these damages flowing nicely. All right, so we're going to hit our opponent for another 4 and put our opponent to 5. Do I want to Cratermaker here? I think I want this Chalice. This stops them from casting a Dreadnought. They might cast a Plow in response because they won't get another opportunity, but that might stop them doing... They've got enough mana they can do Doorkeeper or Dress Down in their own turn. Alright, I think we're going to see the Plow on the Dragon Engine here. There it is. But we got our damage in by playing our spells in that order. That's 4 damage our opponent took. Okay. So they can't use Stifle, so they have to use one of the 2 mana spells. But Cratermaker deals with Dreadnought and the other one, the little Null Drifter. There is the Doorkeeper Thrall. We can't interact with this because of our own Chalice. We will get to draw some cards here. Okay. A Wasteland. Oh, don't use it. Please don't use it. Okay. That is very destructive. Can we draw another Soul Land? No. We can draw a Mountain. So we can play a Cratermaker around Daze and then try and fire it off to kill this Null Drifter before our opponent has Stifle up. We have a Daze here, it's not too shabby. Destroy target colourless non-land permanent, please. Get out of here. We have to do that before Stifle happens. I would love to be able to Reflection of Kiki-Jiki that, but I don't think that's how we need to try and play this game. But our opponent can just play other guys. Now they have the permanent thing of the Doorkeeper Thrall in play. But we can take him to the bounce house with the old Gone. I don't think our opponent has a Daze. You would definitely Daze there, right? Just to stop me from activating it that turn and give you an attack with your Null Drifter. Like, what else is Daze doing for you this game? So I don't believe our opponent has it, so I'm relatively inclined to believe that our Gone is going to resolve. If our opponent has something. Okay, it's a dress down. So this is a dress down where they're desperately looking for something. So if we draw a land, we can attempt to win the game next turn. If our opponent taps to a point where they don't get to flash in the Doorkeeper Thrall. They could have played this dress down in their own end step so that we never get to make Reflection of Kiki-Jiki tokens. Because now we get to attack with 2 Goblin Shamans or copy any creature we find in theory. An Ancient Tomb. Don't hate that one. So if we attack with both, it forces our opponent to block. But if our opponent has a removal spell, then it's kind of whatever anyway, isn't it? Can't we plow? It has to be something like Get Lost, which is a 2-mana spell. Alright, let's put the hurt on our opponent here. Another Doorkeeper Thrall. Okay. They're going to double block our token. And then we bounce their guy, kill their token, put them to 2. Put them to 1, sorry. Okay. So let's Gone one of these. Let's go to the Summoning Sick one. Hello and goodbye. You can't force a will this without dying. You can't Daze it without us being able to pay. This gives us 2 lethal attackers next turn. But if they play like a Dreadnought or something, then obviously that's bad news for us. But if they had a Dreadnought, they would have cast it last turn. But that doesn't mean they can't draw one next turn or draw a cantrip and find one. A Daze. Have you got multiple Dazes over there? Multiple Dazes work. That is the sort of thing our opponent might have. We're hoping that there's just cantrips locked underneath whatever they're doing. So they can cantrip into them with things like Dress Down, not actual cantrips, because of our Chalice. Alright, they just wanted to get the mana out from underneath us. They didn't return the Meticulous Archive as well, which is an odd choice. Nice Flooded Strand opponent. Alright, they're going out on their own turns and cracking it. Alright, so we finished with a 2-3, and in that last game, things did look quite impressive. But let's talk about his deck, because I have some thoughts. Firstly, what are we doing with our mana base? So we have 19 lands and 8 bits of fast mana. Every other list I can find of mono red tends to play 21 lands, like between like 3 and 8 double-faced cards. But they play 21 lands and the 8 bits of fast mana. So we are 2 lands down from where we probably should be, and that bore out in at least 2 of our rounds and cost us games. I think it's so important to be able to actually play your spells. And when you have so many mechanics, like this deck has put in an additional thing to loot away bad cards, right? So if we flood out a little bit, we at least have this and our Fable to correct that. Whereas if we don't get to play our spells, then we're kind of just done. And we're susceptible to wastelands and all sorts. And there's definitely some cards here in this Molten Duplication and this Disruptor Flute that are certainly viable for the chopper block. I don't know why this list has cut 2 lands from the standard red build. I guess they just got somewhat fortunate when they 5-0'd a league with it. But I think the immediate way of improving this deck, the immediate way of improving this deck is to cut probably the Molten Duplications for some more lands. Because the Disruptor Flute is something you can play on turn 1 if that's a thing you need to. Like if you're on the draw, you can see what your opponents play, you can Disrupt the Flute, okay, we're good. Or like post-board games, it's just another thing you can have, whereas Molten Duplication requires you to kind of have other stuff going on. Yeah, it's okay with like Rabblemaster and Bombardiers. It really shines with the Engineer, of course, and just lets you combo your opponent out. But I think it's more important to be able to play your spells. So smash these into 2 mountains, and then all of a sudden we're cooking and our deck's going to function. What I will say is, this little package I'm going to put out to one side. This little package here was good. Like the Dragon Engine, we didn't really get to do this stuff with it. But if we had more land, we might have been able to do more about that sort of jam. I also think you want the Disruptor Flute so you have more things to sacrifice to your Engineer. Certainly a thing. We could also play a couple of Great Furnace just to help our Goblin Engineer, and that'd probably be better than Molten Duplication. Yes, it exposes us to some other bits and pieces, but it gives us the things we need for our Engineer to be more useful, instead of having to pitch either Chrome Moxes or Fable tokens or Chalice, you know, things that we don't really necessarily want to pitch. So I think a couple of Great Furnaces wouldn't go amiss. instead of these Molten Duplications. But yeah, this side of the deck felt good. We had situations where we were behind and we could steal a game, and that's not always a thing you get to do with this mono-red Stompy decks. The next question is, if this package is so good, why are we not just running Painter with that packaging? Because there's lots of Painter decks that do run that. Some of them have started cutting it, just they have more Pyroblast now. I've seen some builds going up to 7 Pyroblast main deck, when normally you'd see sort of like 5 to 6. So we're definitely living in Psychic Frog's world. So why would I play this over a Painter deck? Personally, for me, I just prefer Painter to this. I think the play patterns of playing with Painter is a lot more enjoyable and rewarding. You have lots of like little choices here and there, like what are you tutoring for? How are you attacking? Which plan are you going for? Your land sequencing really matters. There's lots of stuff that's really, really important, and you have many, many decisions. Whereas a deck like this, you have very few decisions. They're very important decisions, but they're compressed into a smaller space of time. And you kind of just go, here's the thing, is it good enough? And, you know, you do have sequencing of threats, but, you know, if you're mulliganing stuff and you don't have enough lands in your deck, then you might end up mulliganing a bit too much, and you don't even have that choice. You have, here's the thing I can do. This is it. Is this good? And that's not necessarily my jam. Yes, I know I play a lot of Turbo Depths, but Turbo Depths is kind of like a puzzle where you have to work out how to get through your opponent's hate. Whereas this is like, here's my thing, is it good enough? Is a little bit different. So this deck is, you know, not my sort of jam. And I'd much rather be on the Painter side. But the reason to run this is Magus of the Moon. So Magus of the Moon is shutting down things like Urza Saga is pretty strong. You do see Magus of the Moons in the Painter decks, because when they board them in, they can board out some Urza Sagas, and they're in control of this effect when it comes in. And when they're boarding it in, it's for matchups like Eldrazi that just get absolutely cooked by it. And that's a good reason to run it, because you can just absolutely steal games. The problem is we're running this whole package, so we have less ways of stealing games. And as you saw against the Bug deck, if we'd have been able to just jam an early Magus and they didn't have counter magic, that's it, that's lights out, and we just win the game. So that's definitely something to consider with a deck like this. We are giving up some free wins by playing Maguses. Maybe you could cut these Disruptor Flutes so that we have more than just the Maguses, because by playing just Maguses, we are cutting down the amount of free wins we get. So maybe smash these two into having 2 Blood Moons. That's also more stuff to pitch to Chrome Mox to make up for the loss of red cards from the Molten Duplication. Turn these into Great Furnaces, and then I think you're cooking with something a bit nicer, in my opinion, there. Disruptor Flute is a good card, don't get me wrong, though. Sideboard-wise, well, we don't have big graveyard hate here. We just have a few Faerie Macabre. That's because we have the Agatha Soul Cauldron, which is fine, and I think this is all right. But the thing we're really missing is like your big artifact haymakers. So Fiery Confluence is a classic where you just go, no, 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 blow up all their scary things, but it also flexes into dealing the last bits of damage when you're trying to chip them down with like Bombardiers and stuff. It also does some real work in terms of playing all these annoying artifact style decks that, you know, play out a bunch of artifacts and you can at least interact with them and mess with them that way. So yeah, I would like to have something like that in there. Now, I understand the Pyroblast is kind of a format for that right now, which, you know, makes our chalices awkward. I was boarding them out for Pyroblast. You can keep both, but then you're very likely to end up in situations where you are increasing your dead draws when we already have quite a lot of dead draws, because, you know, it's got a bunch of mana and accelerants and, you know, chaff like Molten Duplication. We have legendary permanents that we can't have multiple of. They don't actually do anything on their own. So we definitely run the risk, you know, and like the second Magus of the Moon is just a 2-2. So having more dead slots by broadening in the Pyroblast and keeping the Chalice of Void is not something that I like to do. Pyrogoyf instead of something like a Fury. Not sure how I feel about this. Pyrogoyf is cool. I enjoy this card quite a lot, but Fury is a card that helps you out in a tight spot. If you're in a tight spot, maybe you haven't got enough mana to do something like a Pyrogoyf, you can just go, okay, I've got this Fury. Let's do that. And you can do Fury copied by Fable a lot quicker and easier than you can with a Pyrogoyf. Yes, it costs you a card that you pitch from your hand, but having the ability to do that, if your opponent's like running away with the game, you can say, okay, I'm going to play my prison pieces on like my turn 2. So, you know, you're going to go turn 1. Let's say your opponent's on the play. They go turn 1, 1-drop. You go turn 1 Chalice. They go turn 2, 2-drop. You go turn 2 Magus of the Moon. And then you can just Fury, clear out their 2 creatures, and all of a sudden, you're absolutely laughing. So I do like the Fury quite a lot, especially when there's a lot of decks playing a bunch of little guys, whether it's the Ocelot Pride decks or it's the Cradle Control style decks. I think Fury is better than Pyrogoyf. That doesn't mean I don't love Pyrogoyf. This is a cool friend. Maybe we can play a deck with both of them one day. I do like the Pyrogoyf is always like able to dome your opponent as well, but it's a sideboard card. We're boarding it in when we need to kill stuff, right? Or when we need to have like a good mid-rangey threat. And Fury does the same thing, but also can ping off lots of little guys. So I do think it's a case of playing some new cards, but not necessarily playing some optimal cards. All right, I think I've gone over this one a fair bit on my thoughts. I am not the mono-red Stompy player to be taking all your advice from, but you can certainly abide by the fact that this deck needs 2 more lands, and there's no getting away from that one. Alright, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this one. Please remember to like and subscribe, and if you'd like to support me just a little bit on YouTube, you can do that. I have a little membership tier. You can just join that for like $1 a month, so it doesn't really cost you very much, but if 10% of my viewers did that, then I would be making minimum wage, and that'd be lovely. But obviously, if you're not in a financial position to support me, then that's fair enough. Just keep watching and enjoying Legacy. Alright, thank you so much for watching, and goodbye. If you'd like to support me in the channel, please check out my Patreon. It has a free guide to budget turbo depths as well as 3 tiers of support. A low cost one that enters you into my monthly raffle for a free donation deck on the channel, a mid-tier subscription that gives you access to my detailed turbo depths guide that is updated every month as well as regular articles, and lastly the higher tier gives you all of the above as well as a monthly donation deck for my channel. If you're interested in supporting the channel this way, please check out the link in the description.